All right, folks, welcome to Friday. We are going to leave exponent rules behind today. I probably will come back to them for just a bit on Monday to make sure everything is okay. But we are going to move on today and start talking about polynomials. Now, I know that word is going to sound a little complicated to you, but what I'm going to do here for just a minute is talk about what a polynomial is so that you can see that it's really not all that complicated. Now, the first thing we need to talk about is the prefix that you see at the start of that word. The prefix poly means many. The prefix poly means many. Now, it doesn't say how many, so that could be as few as one or as many as you want it to be. So when we talk about a polynomial is a math problem that has many terms. So polynomial means many terms. And that should make us wonder, okay, well, what is a term? And what you need to know about that is that terms are parts of a math problem that are connected by addition or subtraction. So a polynomial has many terms, and the terms are the parts of that math problem that are connected by either addition or subtraction. So let me give you some examples. So if I were to write on the board 5x plus 3y, that is a polynomial. And you'll notice you've been dealing with things that look like that all semester long. So polynomial, many terms. Well, I just told you that terms are connected by adding or subtracting. And when I look at this problem, I only see one plus sign. What does that plus sign connect? Well, it connects 5x and 3y. So this is a polynomial with two terms. 5x is the first term, 3y is the second term. All right, I could have something like 2x squared minus 3x plus 7. That is a polynomial. The terms are the parts that are connected by addition or subtraction. Well, right here is a subtraction sign. Right here is an addition sign, and they connect 1, 2, 3 parts. 2x squared, negative 3x, and positive 7. So this would be a polynomial that has 3 terms. So basically what I'm saying to you here is that if you want to know how many terms one of these has, you look for the plus and minus signs and just count the things that they connect. So I could do something like 8x minus 7y plus 2a minus 3b plus 4. All right? That is a polynomial. It has many terms. How many terms does it have? Well, first of all, let's go through and look for all the adding and subtracting signs. So I've highlighted those. They connect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. 8x is the first term, negative 7y is the second term, positive 2a is the third term, negative 3b is the fourth term, and positive 4 is the last term. So this has 5 terms. Okay, and then we'll finish this off with something that might seem a little strange. Let's look at 5x squared y. Short and sweet. That is a polynomial. You'll notice this time, though, there are no plus or minus signs. So what that means is 5x squared y didn't get connected to anybody. So this would be just one term. Just one term. He didn't connect to anybody else with a plus or a minus sign, so that means he's all on his own. So a polynomial. Poly means many. It has many terms, and the terms are the individual pieces that are connected by those plus and minus signs. Now, we're going to do a lot of things with these polynomials, but today we're going to add and subtract. Okay, now here's what you need to know. And let's see, I think I'll write that right down here. We're going to learn to add and subtract polynomials. To add and subtract polynomials. To add and subtract polynomials, what you are going to do is combine like terms. Combine like terms, which thankfully is something we have done a lot this year. So this is going to be a lesson that I think you'll benefit from the fact that it's got some old stuff in it. So to add and subtract polynomials, combine like terms. Okay, so I'm going to start with the problem that you see here on this slide. Okay, when you do one of these problems, what I want you to understand is you're going to see two sets of parentheses. Okay, the first set of parentheses is polynomial 1. So this is polynomial number 1. The second set of parentheses is polynomial number 2. So each polynomial is going to come to you wrapped in its own set of parentheses. Now, it's going to be super important that you look right in the middle of the problem, right in between those two sets of parentheses to see what sign is there. So I'm going to come right here in between my two polynomials, and I'm going to circle that sign right there because it's really important that I see that. This is an addition problem, so this sign is telling me to add like terms. So it's an addition problem, add your like terms. So here we go. Here we go. So I'm going to start out over here in polynomial number 1, and I am going to highlight this first term. The first term in that polynomial is 11x. Now I know that a like term for that is going to have the same variable attached to it, so it should also have an x at the end of it. So when I come over here and I look at these three terms, there's only one that ends with x, and that's this one. That's negative 5x. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight negative 5x. So those two terms are like terms because they both end in x. 11x, negative 5x. Now, here comes the part where we combine these, and I want you to remember this sign right here in the middle is telling me to add these like terms together. So what you're going to do here is you're going to do 11x plus negative 5x. 11x plus negative 5x. You're going to add because this is an addition problem that says to add like terms. Now, by the way, this stuff that I'm writing over here in this area, you don't have to write it on your paper. This is, again, me just writing it down so you can see what my thinking is, so you can see what I'm doing. So when I do 11x plus negative 5x, 11 plus negative 5 is 6, and then I'll have to put an x at the end of that 6 so I know where it came from. 11x plus negative 5x is 6x. You have to reattach that variable. So those like terms have been combined. All right, now we're going to continue on. So I'm going to go back to polynomial number 1, and I'm going to get the next term. the next term is a negative x squared. Now I know that that means that there is an invisible 1 right there in front of that x squared, so I'm going to write that in there. So this term is negative 1x squared. Now I need to look in polynomial number 2 to see if anybody is like him. So it needs to end with x squared. So I see a like term for him right here because this ends with x squared. So 2x squared is the like term. So I've highlighted those in blue to show that those are like terms, and I'm going to combine those. And because this is an addition problem, I'm going to add these like terms together. So I am about to do negative 1x squared plus 2x squared. So this is the point where I would type into my calculator negative 1 plus 2, which is a positive 1. And then they both ended with x squared, so I need to put an x squared on that 1. So negative 1x squared plus 2x squared is positive 1x squared, and I put that in my answer after I combine them. Okay, so we've got one more set of terms to go. The last term that I see in the first polynomial is a positive 13. Now I want you to notice he doesn't have a variable. He's the only term in that polynomial that didn't have a variable. So when I go over to polynomial number 2, I'm looking for a term that's like him, a term that doesn't have a variable. And I see that right here in my negative 23. Now I'm going to combine those two terms that I just highlighted in green. They are like terms, so I am going to add those like terms. So I'm about to do 13 plus negative 23. Now if you grab your calculator and you type in 13 plus negative 23, you're going to get a negative 10. So I'm going to put a negative 10 over here in my answer. And I don't have a variable to attach to that because neither one of the terms that I combined had a variable with them. So you have now successfully added these two polynomials together by adding their like terms. We did the 11x plus the negative 5x. 11 plus negative 5 is 6, and we put an x beside that. Then we did negative 1x squared plus 2x squared. Negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1, and then we put the x squared on that. And then we did 13 plus negative 23, which is negative 10. So this would be the answer that I get from adding those like terms together. So to add these polynomials, we add their like terms. Okay, let's do another one. Now again here, in the first set of parentheses, I have polynomial number 1. In the second set of parentheses, I have polynomial number 2. And right here in the middle, between them, there is a plus sign that tells me I am going to add like terms. Add like terms. So again here, if I were you, I would start out over here in polynomial number 1 and I would look at my first term. Your first term is 5w to the third. So this ends with w to the third. So when I look over here in polynomial number 2, I'm looking for w to the third. And I don't see it. There are no w to the third powers over here. So what that means is there's nothing to add to this one. So you're just going to bring down 5w to the third and write it down in your answer. He doesn't get to combine with anybody. So we'll move on. The next term in polynomial number 1 is minus w. I know there's a 1 right there in front of that, so I'm going to go ahead and write it in. Now notice that that ends with w, just plain old w, so I need to look over here for something where the ending is just a w. And I see that right here with my negative 4w. So those two terms that I just highlighted are like terms, and I'm going to add them because that's what the sign in the middle says to do. So I'm going to do a negative 1 plus a negative 4. So negative 1 plus negative 4 is negative 5. So I'll write that in my answer. Both of these terms ended with a W, so that negative 5 has to end with a W just like they did. We have to reattach that ending. Now, keep in mind, the highlighted things are the things we've dealt with. The things that are not highlighted yet are the things that we still have to do, so we got more to do here. So my next term over here is a positive 2W squared. He ends with W squared. In this polynomial, I see another term that has W squared. So the two that I just highlighted are going to get added because of that addition sign. So we're going to do a positive 2 plus 3. So positive 2 plus 3. That's positive 5. A lot of 5s in this problem. We had W squared as the ending for both of these, so we will have W squared as the ending for this term. So we reattach that ending. Don't forget that. Now, I see one more set of terms that are not highlighted, so I'm going to get these last. This will end the problem. I have over here a positive 4. Notice no variable. Over here I have a positive 1 that doesn't have a variable. So again here, I'm going to add those two terms together. So a positive 4 plus a positive 1, 4 plus 1 is positive 5, so we'll put plus 5 on the end. I'm just going to be honest. I would have been really disappointed if that number hadn't been a 5. So after combining my like terms, here is my answer. Now notice this was an addition problem, so I added the like terms from the first set of parentheses to the terms in the second set of parentheses. I'm always adding on these. Okay, let's get one more addition problem in here, and then we'll do a little subtracting. Okay, first polynomial in that first set of parentheses, second polynomial. Right in the middle, I've got this plus sign. So this is telling me to add my like terms. So always make sure when you combine like terms on this one that you are adding. So come over here, start at the beginning. 12 is your first term. He has no variable. So when we go over to that second polynomial, we're looking for the term that doesn't have a variable. And we see that right here. We see positive 15. So now we are going to add these like terms together. We're going to do 12 plus 15. 12 plus 15 is 27, and we write that down. Okay, so move on to the next unhighlighted term. We have a positive 8k to the third. That ends with k to the third. So I'm looking over here for something that ends with k to the third. And that is this term, 5k to the third. Because this is an addition problem, I'm going to add these together. So I'm going to do a positive 8 plus 5. A positive 8 plus 5 is a positive 13. Both of these ended with k to the third. So I have got to put k to the third power with that 13. Okay, moving on. Not done yet. Next up, we have a positive 3k. He ends with k. When I look over here, minus k is the one that's going to match up with him. And I know when I see that minus k, that means minus 1k. So again here, I'm going to add those two like terms together. So positive 3 plus negative 1. Positive 3 plus negative 1 is a positive 2. And because both of those terms ended with k, that 2 has to end with a k. It's got to have the same ending. Now you'll see we're getting close to the end because we've only got two terms that are not highlighted. We have negative 4k squared, ending in k squared, positive 2k squared, which also ends in k squared. and we're going to add those like terms together. So we're going to do -4 plus 2. -4 plus 2 is -2. They both end in k squared, so my -2 needs to end in k squared. Now that everything is highlighted, I know I'm done. So notice that plus sign in the middle of the problem is really important because he is telling you when you find like terms, add them. Add those like terms together. Now, moving on to this problem, you'll notice this time it looks pretty much the same. We have polynomial number 1 right here, polynomial number 2 right here, but this time the thing you'll notice is different is in the middle there is a subtraction sign. So on this problem you are going to subtract like terms. So that middle sign you really have to pay attention to because he tells you whether you're going to add the like terms or subtract the like terms. All right, so we'll start out with term number 1, 3m squared. So I need something over here that ends with m squared, which is right here. You'll notice there is no number in front of that, but I am used now to the fact that that's got to be a 1. So notice this time I'm going to subtract to combine these like terms. So I'm going to do 3m squared minus 1m squared. So it's 3 minus 1. I know that 3 minus 1 is 2. And since both of those terms end with m squared, I had better put m squared behind that 2. So notice, the only thing that's changing on this problem is that I am now subtracting the numbers instead of adding them. All right, so moving on, I have a positive 7m. So he ends in m. The term over here that ends with m is this positive 2m. Now again, remember, this is a subtraction problem, so I am going to subtract to combine these. So I'm going to do 7m, so 7m minus positive 2m. So 7 minus 2. 7 minus 2 is 5. Positive 5, so I'm going to put plus 5. And since both of these ended with m, I'm going to put an m behind that 5. Okay, one more to go. My last term is -1. He doesn't have a variable. Over here, the term that doesn't have a variable is this -5. So I am going to combine those two. Now remember though, it is a subtraction problem. This part we need to be careful with. We need to subtract these like terms. So you're going to do a -1 minus a -5. You're not doing -1 minus 5, you're doing -1 minus -5. That is going to be a positive 4. Because remember, when you do -1 minus -5, the minus a negative changes to plus. Ooh, I think I just did that wrong. No, I didn't. I didn't write my negative on my 1. -1 minus -5 would be -1 plus 5, which is positive 4. So that's how that happens. I apologize. I about messed up there. So this would be my answer. So notice the only thing that's different on a subtraction problem is that when you combine like terms, you subtract them instead of adding them. So I can't stress enough how important that middle sign is because he tells you what operation to do. So polynomial number 1, polynomial number 2, subtract like terms. Subtract like terms. That's what that sign in the middle that I just circled is saying to you. So 7v ends with a v. The term over here that ends with v is my positive 8v. So I'm going to subtract those like terms. So I'm going to do 7 minus 8. 7 minus 8 is -1. Both of these ended with a v, so that -1 has to end with a v. Now, moving on, we have -v squared. That ends with v squared. So over here, I have positive v squared. Now, ones in front of both of those. A lot of you right now may be looking at that thinking, oh, those are going to cancel each other out. And if we were adding, they would. But remember on this one, we are subtracting like terms. So you're going to do negative 1v squared minus positive 1v squared. So negative 1 minus 1. That's going to be negative 2. And since they both ended in v squared, negative 2 needs a v squared. And then we're going to finish this off. Positive 14, no variable there. Positive 15, no variable there. We're going to do 14 minus 15, which is negative 1. So subtract like terms. Look for the sign in the middle of the problem. It will tell you which operation you are doing. All right, let's get one more in here. On this one, notice the sign in the middle is telling me to subtract like terms. I start off with 2m. The term that is like him is negative 2m. Be careful here. Be careful here. I could see getting tripped up right here. This is 2m minus negative 2m. We got to subtract. So 2 minus negative 2. 2 minus negative 2 is 4. And that will have to have an m because the two terms that we're combining had an m. All right, next up, negative 3. No variable on him. So over here, positive 3 has no variable. So we're going to combine these two and we're going to subtract. So we're going to do negative 3 minus 3. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. No variable needed because the terms didn't have one. And then we end this up with a positive 7m squared. The term that has the same variable is negative 9m squared. And again here we're going to subtract these like terms. So we're going to do positive 7 minus negative 9. So 7 minus negative 9 is a positive 16. Both ended with m squared, so this 16 needs an m squared. And there is your answer. So the biggest piece of advice that I have for you on today's problems is to make sure you pay attention to whether there is a plus sign in the middle of the problem or a minus sign in the middle of the problem. Plus sign in the middle means add your like terms. Minus sign in the middle of a problem means subtract your like terms. Use your calculator to help with those sign numbers. On the assignment you're going to do today, the first side of the sheet is all adding. The second side of the sheet is all subtracting. So work carefully. If you have questions, make a little note of it on the assignment, and we'll take care of those on Monday. Thanks for your attention and thanks for your effort on this assignment. Have a good weekend.